The first rays of the sun crested the horizon, igniting the endless expanse of grassland in fierce gold and crimson. Already the air hummed with heat, and the shadows beneath the acacia trees shrank away from the growing glare. At the heart of a parched clearing lay a shallow depression filled with thick, rust-red clay, one of the last sources of moisture this time of year. Its surface gleamed like burnished copper in the early light, drawing creatures from miles around. From opposite directions, the earth trembled under approaching footsteps. To the west, Mpaya's herd emerged from a grove of fever trees, their dusty hides puckered with sweat. The matriarch herself, her flanks broad, her eyes ringed with ancient wisdom, led the slow procession, calves nudging drooping mothers, young bulls awkwardly testing the firmness of the ground with heavy forefeet. Their trunks swayed in unison as they trumpeted greetings, horns clashing gently in ritual salutation. From the east, Chanzi's clan cut a contrasting silhouette against the dawn light. Their ranks were tighter, disciplined, bulls with thick necks and ivory tusks curved like crescent moons, guardians flanking the vulnerable. At their center strode Chanzi, head held high, gaze fixed unwaveringly on the clay pit. His massive ears flapped against the rising heat as scouts, lean adolescent females, scanned the horizon for rivals or predators, their trunks probing the air for each shifting scent. Between the two herds, tension crackled like static electricity. Dust devils spiraled over trampled grass, echoing the unrest in the animals' hearts. Calves whimpered at the edge of the clay, hesitant to step forward, while adult elephants trumpeted warnings and beat the ground with resounding thumps of their feet. Mpaya and Chanzi exchanged low rumbles, ancient calls charged with territorial claim and ancestral memory. All around, vultures circled overhead, anticipating the conflict to come, and the savannah seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see which herd would drink first, or whether this dawn would give way to open battle. Yet even as the two matriarchs sized each other up across the glowing clay, a deeper instinct stirred in Mpaya's breast. The clay pit's magic could unite as well as divide. And so, with measured steps and lifted trunks, she signaled the beginning of a ritual that would test the strength of rivalry and the hope for peace. As the morning heat intensified, the two matriarchs, Mpaya of the Western Grove and Chanzi of the Eastern Plains, stood mere trunks of baobab apart, their herds arrayed behind them in tense ranks. The source of their enmity lay not in fresh affronts, but in wounds of seasons past. Years ago, during a drought even harsher than this, both clans had converged on the same dwindling waterhole. In the scramble for survival, younger bulls had clashed tusk to tusk, and the resulting bloodletting had stained the clay red, an omen that neither herd would soon forget. Mpaya's memory stretched back to that fateful season. She recalled how her own daughters, then calves no larger than warthogs, had clung trembling to her flanks as rival matriarchs stamped the ground in warning. She remembered the scent of sweat and fear hanging heavy in the air, the echo of trumpeted challenges that rolled across the savannah like thunder. The soil itself, dried and cracked underfoot, had seemed to rebel at their violence. When the rains finally came, they washed away the blood, but the stain of resentment lingered deep within each clan's collective memory. Chanzi, too, bore scars of the past. His right tusk was chipped at the tip, a jagged testament to a contest he had long since won, but which cost him both pride and the trust of his peers. He carried himself with a reigning authority born of that triumph, his broad shoulders squared and his gait unyielding. Each time he approached a water source, he felt the eyes of Mpaya's scouts boring into his flank, as though demanding recompense for an old debt. Now, as their herds faced one another at the clay pit, that old rivalry simmered beneath every twitch of ear and flare of nostril. Dust drifted in lazy spirals around their feet, carrying whispers of bygone clashes, the crack of splintering branches, the whinny of startled zebras, the final earth-shaking trumpet of retreat. Behind each clan, young bulls fanned their ears aggressively, eager to prove themselves worthy of ancestral glory. while calves pressed low to the ground, seeking refuge in the matriarch's protective shadows. Yet, in the charged atmosphere, a softer impulse flickered within Mampaya's heart, the instinct to protect her lineage not only from thirst, but from needless bloodshed. She inhaled the scent of the clay, warm, earthy, tinged with minerals, and sensed how the mud itself, when shared in ritual, could bind two clans together rather than tear them apart. Across the gap, her gaze met Chanzi's unwavering stare, and for a moment both leaders glimpsed the possibility of a new tradition, one that might heal wounds older than memory and forge an alliance in place of animosity. In that pregnant silence, the savannah held its breath, awaiting the decision of two wise hearts. Would they surrender to the ancient feud, or would they dare to rewrite fate by embracing the clay's unifying power? The tension finally snapped like a dry twig beneath Chanzi's heavy foot. With a thunderous trumpet, he charged forward, tusks lowered, ears flared, in a display of challenge that sent dust arching into the air. Mpaya responded in kind, her own trumpet a resonant rumble that rolled across the clay pit. Behind them, both herds surged. Bulls bristled, matriarchs trumpeted warnings, and calves let out frightened squeals. Chanzi and Mpaya met at the water's edge in a whirlwind of sand and clay. Their massive heads crashed together with earth-shaking force, ivory tusks clashing in sparks of raw power. Thick red clay spattered in every direction as each leader drove against the other. Muscles knotted beneath skin that bore the sheen of sweat and dust. Around them, younger bulls fought their own skirmishes, but all eyes remained riveted on the two matriarchs, each the embodiment of her herd's pride and past grievances. For long moments they locked in brutal stalemate. Chanzi's chipped tusk cut a shallow groove in Mpaya's flank, and she answered by jabbing him in the side with her trunk, flinging a spray of clay across his broad shoulder. Their trumpets merged into a cacophony of defiance, echoing over the shimmering heat haze. The clay pit trembled under their combined weight. Puddles rippled outward in concentric rings, and the water turned a deeper russet from their furious struggle. But even as force met force, a curious thing occurred. The calves, who had watched in paralyzed fear, began to advance, stepping between the combatants and trumpeting plaintive cries. Their small bodies blurred with motion as they circled their leaders, calling for mercy. Mothers reached down with their trunks to lift frightened offspring away from the fray. And as Chanzi and Mpaya paused to trumpet once more, each straining to overpower the other, their eyes met not with rage, but with sudden clarity. In that heartbeat of stillness, the surrounding savannah seemed to inhale. The wind dropped, the circling vultures froze overhead. Even the distant acacia leaves stilled. Both matriarchs felt the weight of their herd's future pressing upon them. The bloodied clay between them no longer marked a boundary, but a shared stage on which their children's lives would play out. Slowly, Mpaya lowered her head, and Chanzi did the same. The clay-smeared warriors ceased their battle, trunks lifted in cautious salutation rather than attack. The younger elephants trumpeted in relief and awe. As dust settled, two great shapes stood amid the red mud, equally matched in strength, tempered now by a dawning wisdom that would guide both herds toward a fragile peace. The ancient feud had reached its zenith, and in the quiet aftermath, a new path lay open before them, waiting to be marked not by war, but by the humble art of shared ritual. As the two great elephants stood hushed amid the red clay, Mpaya lifted her trunk skyward and emitted a long, low rumble that echoed like distant thunder across the watering hole. It was a signal she had learned from her own mother, an invitation not to battle but to gather for deliberation. One by one, the senior females of both herds responded, their trunks drawing concentric arcs in the air as they trumpeted acknowledgement and fell into a loose circle around the clay pit. Mpaya stepped forward, her massive feet stirring the damp mud into rippling patterns. She pressed her trunk into the clay, kneading it between her leathery lips until it formed a thick, malleable paste. With slow, deliberate motions, she demonstrated how to smear the mixture across her foreleg, how the mud would cool their skin and seal minor wounds, while also serving as a symbol of shared purpose. Behind her, Chanzi watched closely and then approached, dipping his tusk into the same clay and offering the bundle to his own matriarchs as an act of solidarity rather than defiance. The senior females of each herd took turns touching the clay with trunk tips, their eyes softening as they felt the coolness of the paste against their hot skin. Young bulls, initially restless and tense, paused at the edge of the gathering, drawn by the calming ritual unfolding before them. Calves nudged their mothers' sides for reassurance, but found comfort in the collective stillness, a peace born not of fear, but of unity. The ritual's cadence was unhurried. Smear, pause, sniff, and then smear again. Each movement weaving a silent agreement that the clay would bind them more strongly than rivalry ever could. As the sun climbed higher, the assembled elephants dipped their feet into the shallow pool of clay, stirring it into a deeper hue that reflected the shared experiences of both herds. Mpaya and Chanzi then led a solemn procession around the pit's perimeter, each elephant trailing a line of clay-streaked footprints as a living testament to their truce. The gathered herds followed suit, their passage around the waterhole transforming a battleground into a communal sanctum. By the time the last matriarch returned to her original spot, the tension had melted away, replaced by a palpable sense of mutual respect and the promise of cooperation. In the hush that followed, the senior elephants trumpeted a harmonious call, a sound at once tender and triumphant. The clay bath ritual had done its work. It soothed hot tempers, cooled the skin, and most importantly, bridged the chasm between two once antagonistic clans. As dust motes danced in the afternoon light, the savannah itself seemed to exhale, acknowledging that in the wisdom of its eldest guardians, real power lay not in dominance, but in the courage to seek peace. As the last echoes of the joint trumpet faded across the red earth, a profound stillness settled over the watering hole. The young bulls, once bristling with challenge, stood motionless, their restless side-to-side shuffling replaced by gentle swaying. Beneath their feet, the thick, spongy layer of wet clay muffled every step, its coolness seeping into their overheated limbs and coaxing tension from their muscles. Mpaya, sensing the moment's fragility, dipped her trunk into the clay once more and began smoothing it across her broad forehead in rhythmic strokes. The mud, warmed by the sun yet retaining a refreshing chill, formed a living armor against both the midday heat and the old animosities. One by one, elephants from both herds stepped forward, trunks extended in quiet invitation. A young female from Chanzi's clan pressed her cheek against Mpaya's silken side, as though sealing a vow of friendship in the cooling clay's embrace. All around, scenes of reconciliation blossomed. Calves from opposite sides splashed together at the pool's edge, sending arcs of clay water glittering through the air. Their mothers watched with calm approval, trunks gently entwining in greeting before each dipped down to scoop fresh clay for her offspring's hide. Even the most formidable young bulls, who only moments before had squared their shoulders in challenge, now stood side by side, trunks overlapping in a communal swirl of mottled gray and russet. Chanzi himself ambled to the center of the pit, trunk raised high as if to bless the gathering. He dipped his tusks into the soft mixture and ran them along Mpaya's flank, leaving twin stripes of clay that glowed like ceremonial paint. A low, rumbling harmony rose as the assembled herds responded in kind, each elephant marking another as friend rather than foe. The act was simple, yet profound. By sharing the clay's cool embrace, they shared trust, cooled old wounds, and affirmed a new bond. As the ritual drew to a close, the elephants formed a wide circle around the pool, bodies touching trunk to trunk in silent unity. The air vibrated with the soft murmur of breath and the gentle slap of tails. Above them, the acacia canopy rustled in a warm breeze, as if the savannah itself sighed in contentment. And in that sacred ring of peace, where clay had replaced conflict, Two rival herds stood as one, ready to face the dry season together, their footsteps leaving a mural of truce etched forever into the earth. With the clay ritual complete and the herd's spirits calmed, Mpaya and Chanzi turned their attention to practical concerns, finding new grazing grounds and water sources beyond the shrinking clay pit. Side by side, they led their combined herds across the parched savanna, trunks gently entwined in a gesture of solidarity. The elephants moved with deliberate purpose, each step stirring up dust that glowed like embers in the waning light. Ahead, a thin ribbon of river shimmered in the late afternoon haze, its once broad banks reduced to cracked mudflats. Scouts from both clans, long-legged adolescent females, scouted the terrain, sniffing for hidden channels and lush patches of vegetation. Their trunks probed beneath the cracked surface, lifting stones to reveal pockets of moisture or exposing the roots of hardy grasses. When they signaled back with joyous trumpets, the matriarchs nodded in approval, and the procession shifted its course toward these verdant havens. As they moved, the elephants shared knowledge. From older members of Mpaya's herd came memories of a sheltered bend in the river where papyrus thrived. From Chanzi's clan came tales of an ancient, now dry oxbow fed by underground springs. Together, they followed these leads, forging a route that neither clan could have discovered alone. Calves trailed in the center of the group, protected by a moving flank of bulls and matriarchs, their tentative steps leaving a delicate lace of footprints behind. When at last they arrived at the hidden oxbow, the sight lifted spirits like sudden rain. Patches of emerald grass sprouted along its crescent edge, and small pools of clear water shimmered beneath overhanging acacias. The elephants inhaled deeply, each breath a relief, and drifted into the oasis. Mpaya plunged her trunk into the pool, sending up gentle plumes of silt as she tested the depth. Chanzi followed, and together they trumpeted a jubilant duet that echoed off the distant kopjes. Herbivores long driven apart by thirst now grazed side by side. Young bulls sparred playfully with their former rivals, calves splashed in the shallows, and matriarchs exchanged gentle touches, with trunks in a web of camaraderie. The water's surface became a mirror to this newfound unity. Mottled gray bodies surrounded by rust-red clay stains, all reflecting the same golden sunset. As dusk fell and the first stars shimmered overhead, the combined herd settled in for the night. Mpaya and Chanzi stood shoulder to shoulder at the water's edge, their eyes reflecting both satisfaction and the weight of leadership. The clay bath truce had blossomed into genuine cooperation, transforming the former battleground into a shared refuge. In the parched plains of the savannah, seeds of unity had taken root, promising that even in the driest seasons, life could flourish when rivals became allies. As dawn's first light painted the savannah in soft purples and gold, the united elephant herd stirred from their communal rest. Mpaya and Chanzi stood at the water's edge of the hidden oxbow, their broad flanks side by side, trunks entwined in a final ritual of solidarity before the long trek ahead. The calves, now brimming with confidence, gambled through knee-high grasses, sending up little clouds of dust that caught the morning light like drifting embers. The combined herd set off together, a flowing river of gray and rust-stained hides stretching across the parched plains. With every ponderous footfall, they compacted the dusty soil into a firm trail, an ever-widening pathway that would guide future herds to this once-secret oasis. Young bulls from both clans fell into step beside one another, their playful jostling tempered by the respect forged at the clay bath. Each lean adolescent knew that cooperation now meant survival in the months to come. Mothers led calves along the center line of the procession, trunks cradling little ones in moments of fatigue, while older matriarchs, those who had witnessed seasons more savage than memory, shared whispered rumbles of counsel. They pointed their trunks toward distant termite mounds, signifying moist soil beneath, and flicked ears toward acacia groves where dew tended to linger in shaded hollows. From Chanzi's herd came legends of a hidden spring beneath an ancient baobab. From Mpaya's, recollections of a secluded pan that filled with rainwater long after the rains had ceased. Guided by this combined wisdom, the herd navigated an ever-shifting landscape of dust and stone. As the sun climbed high, the afternoon heat wavered in golden mirages. When the midday meal, sweet mopane leaves and thorn-tipped twigs, drew near, the herd halted in a clearing dotted with fever trees. Here, under a vault of fluttering leaves, they paused to feed and rest. Calves tested their tusks on young acacia shoots, while elders soaked their bellies in a shallow depression of leaned-back dung and mud, an impromptu second clay bath that soothed chafed skin and refreshed the spirit. The gentle slapping of tails and the soft hum of contented rumbles filled the air as all felt the bond that now bound two formerly rival clans. By late afternoon, the herd resumed its march, footprints reflecting the path across the baked earth like a living map. When night fell and the sky speckled with diamond stars, they bedded down together in a vast semicircle, matriarchs forming an outer ring of protection and calves huddled at the center. Mpaya and Chanzi settled side by side, symbols of a new tradition. Under the hush of the nocturnal savanna, their low, synchronized rumbles wove through the air like a lullaby of unity. In the days and weeks that followed, the herd's solidarity proved its worth. They discovered hidden waterholes long forgotten by lone clans, shared grazing grounds unaffected by drought, and deterred marauding predators by their sheer strength in numbers. Word of this remarkable alliance spread across the plains. Lone bulls and stranger herds sought passage along their well-trodden trail. And each time another clan joined the procession, they too crossed the clay-stained earth, pledging peace in the same ancient ritual. Thus, the Claybath Truce became more than a single event. It transformed into an enduring covenant across the savanna. And whenever dry seasons tested the land's resilience, elephants from every corner of the plains would follow those interlaced footprints, trusting the path carved by Mpaya and Chanzi, a testament to the power of empathy, the wisdom of matriarchs, and the promise that even the fiercest rivals can forge bonds stronger than the fiercest storms.